Welcome back to my channel. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating rise and fall and rise again stories in modern television, how Cesar Millan, the man the world once called the Dog Whisperer, built an empire from nothing, lost almost everything, and then managed to rebuild his life, reputation, and fortune when most people thought he was finished. This is not just a story about dogs, it's a story about collapse, reinvention, and the cost of being legendary. They called him the man who could calm a tornado on 4 legs. For years, Cesar Millan walked into living rooms full of chaos and walked out with obedience, respect, and silence. To millions, he was more than a TV host. He was a myth, a standard, a proof that leadership and calm could tame anything. But the story didn't end where television cameras stopped. Behind the fame, behind the success, something else was growing: pressure, scrutiny, and a level of backlash powerful enough to break the very person who once seemed unbreakable. To understand what really happened to Cesar Millan, why his name vanished from prime time, why his career imploded, and how he managed to rebuild himself from the lowest point in his life, we have to go back to the beginning, before the Dog Whisperer even existed. Because the fall makes no sense until you understand how high he actually climbed. 1. The rise of the Dog Whisperer. Cesar Millan did not arrive in America with fame, a visa, or a safety net. He crossed the border illegally at 21, alone, unable to speak English, working basic jobs just to survive. His obsession wasn't money, it was dogs, their energy, their psychology, their language. While most people trained dogs with food or commands, Millan watched behavior, posture, tension, hierarchy. He wasn't teaching tricks, he was re-engineering mindset. Word spread fast. First among small California neighborhoods, then celebrity homes: Jada Pinkett Smith, Vin Diesel, Oprah. By the time National Geographic called, the brand was already born. But television turned that quiet local legend into a global belief system. The Dog Whisperer premiered in 2004 and exploded. The formula was unbeatable: uncontrolled, dangerous dogs turned around in minutes by a single man with body language and composure alone. Cesar became a symbol people trusted more than trainers, more than vets, sometimes more than logic. The public saw confidence and mastery, not the risk, not the pressure, not the cost. His face was everywhere. Tours sold out. Books hit bestseller lists. His name became shorthand for control. And yet, hidden behind the applause, the image that built his empire would also become the weapon used to tear it apart. 2. The philosophy that built the legend. Cesar's method didn't look like training, it looked like psychology. Where other trainers treated the dog, he treated the energy of the human first. Calm, assertive state, rules before affection, exercise before comfort. It was a reversal of how Americans had been loving their pets. And people listened because the results were visible within minutes. He made a simple but powerful claim: dogs do not follow love, they follow stability, structure, and state of mind. That idea rewired millions of households. People began to stand straighter, move quieter, breathe slower, raise their chin, change their gaze, stop comforting panic and start correcting it. In some homes it worked like magic. Dogs stopped biting, jumping, screaming at windows. Marriages credited him. Families credited him. Owners said he didn't just fix dogs, he fixed them. That philosophy is why he became a cultural phenomenon. Not because of dogs, but because he offered control in a world that felt uncontrollable. But there was a second side to this same philosophy, one that audiences didn't see until years later: the belief that dominance and correction was sometimes necessary. On television, short clips of firm physical redirections looked decisive, heroic, confident. But to critics, the very same corrections looked like force, suppression, and outdated dominance theory packaged for TV entertainment. The same teachings that launched him were now accumulating quiet enemies: researchers, behaviorists, journalists, advocates, all waiting for a moment to challenge the myth. And that moment would come. Because when a man is elevated as the one who never loses control, the world begins to wait for the first time he does. 3. The cracks begin. Fame is not pressure, expectation is. Cesar wasn't just a man on TV anymore, he was a prototype of perfection. The audience didn't want a trainer, they wanted an infallible force. One wrong clip, one bad outcome, one injury, one angry client was no longer just a mistake, it was an attack on the entire persona. The first cracks appeared quietly, minor criticism in journals and blogs, professionals arguing his methods were television psychology, claims that his dominance model could escalate anxiety, rescue groups calling his methods outdated and unsafe. At first, none of it mattered. He was too big, too watched, too profitable. But then came the first publicized complaints, lawsuits, allegations of injury, disputes over rough handling, and suddenly the critics had oxygen. Clips were slowed down, frames were analyzed, every correction was reinterpreted under a microscope with zero context. The internet was no longer cheering. It was dissecting. The image that once looked heroic now looked threatening, and the audience that once idolized him began asking questions they had never asked before. Was this mastery, or was this control by force? Was this leadership, or fear disguised as technique? Was the calm dog on camera actually suppressed, not healed? This wasn't the fall, not yet. But this is where the public flipped from belief to skepticism, and that turn is what made the collapse possible. Because controversy alone does not destroy a legend, doubt does. 4. The public reversal and backlash explodes. The silence broke all at once. What had been small isolated criticisms suddenly turned into a coordinated wave. Articles, petitions, segments on news shows, animal rights commentators, and former supporters turning against him. Clips from The Dog Whisperer circulated out of context, not full episodes, just the hardest moments, and were framed as evidence of cruelty instead of correction. Then came the legal and media blows, lawsuits alleging dog injuries, public complaints from owners claiming his methods went too far, and commentators accusing the show of normalizing aggression. Whether people agreed or not didn't matter, the narrative had shifted. He was no longer being discussed as the man who fixes dogs, but the man accused of harming them. The timing made it worse. Television had changed. Public tolerance for dominance methods fell fast. Social media amplified outrage. And a new generation of trainers built their brand on opposing him. It was no longer just criticism, it was a replacement movement. Cesar went from icon to target, not because the world discovered something new about him, but because the climate for who he was had changed. And while he was fighting a battle in public that every empire eventually faces, a second war, far more destructive, was unfolding in private. 5. Collapse. Divorce, loss, and near-suicide. Public backlash is one kind of fall. Private collapse is another, and his hit harder than anything the press wrote. At the height of his fame, his marriage ended after 16 years. His wife filed not only for divorce but for financial support at the very moment his brand was under fire. The home life that looked stable from the outside was disintegrating. Then his most loyal companion, the dog that defined his identity and career, died. Not a pet, but the animal that symbolized his purpose. That double loss, family and foundation, broke the image of control he had built his life on. The man who taught calm under pressure now had no pressure valve left. In interviews much later, he admitted something no one expected to hear from someone seen as unshakable: he reached the point of intending to end his own life. Not a metaphor, a real attempt. For the first time since America met him, he was not leading anyone. He was falling alone. That moment, not the lawsuits, not the backlash, was the actual bottom. Because when a public figure disappears, people assume scandal ended them. But often it is something quieter and more human: grief, exhaustion, collapse. The most important part of his story is not that he broke, it's that he rebuilt. But the man who returned was not the same man who left. Cesar Millan's life is a reminder that icons are not protected from collapse, they are exposed to it more than anyone. He went from undocumented worker to global phenomenon, from cultural hero to public target, from mental collapse to reinvention. And today, he stands not as a myth, but as proof that a life can break, rebuild, and still persist with value. If you watched him in the years he was untouchable, you saw the performance. If you look at him now, you see the man. What happened to Cesar Millan wasn't a disappearance. It was a transformation.